Hello, my name is Alexander Lucard, and I am an HMIS system administrator for Montgomery County. In this training, we are going to be discussing chronic homelessness, both the definition of it and how to properly code it in the service point HMIS system that we use here in Montgomery County. So what does a client need to count as chronically homeless? Well, there are several things that they have to have in their record so that the HMIS system marks them as chronically homeless. The first is that the head of the household must have a disabling condition. Not the spouse, not the significant other, not the children. They can have one as well, and this is covered in the APR, but the head of the household must definitely have a disabling condition. That is one of the first requirements for a client to be chronically homeless. The second is that the head of the household must be currently staying in either an emergency shelter, a low barrier shelter, a safe haven, or a place not meant for habitation. When we say place not meant for habitation, it's a catch-all for multiple things, like staying in a tent, or living under a bridge, or squatting in a derelict building. Things like that count as a place not meant for habitation. The third thing is that the head of the household must then have been at that location for either 12 straight consecutive months, 12 months in a row, or a total of 12 months across 4 different stays in 3 years. So if the client was, say, at that low barrier shelter for 11 straight months, left, came back 2 years later, and then stayed for another 6 months, that's more than 12 months in a 3-year span. So he would count there as having those 12 or more months in 3 years. You can also count a brief institutional stay towards this benchmark of 12 months, but only if it's 90 days or less. So if they stay in an institution for, say, 45 days, you can count it. If they stay there for 91 days, nope, doesn't count. It must be 90 days or less. All right. And again, all of this must be in regards to the head of the household. If a person does not meet all of these qualifications, they're not going to count as chronically homeless. All right. I would also refer you to the PowerPoint that we've made that goes along with this presentation, because there's some great examples in there of how a person counts as chronically homeless and when they don't. So again, I would refer you to the corresponding PowerPoint presentation that goes along with this. Now, in today's training, we're going to set up a person and show you how or how not they will be listed as chronically homeless in our HMIS system. So what we're going to do is we are going to go look at Jane Jetson. We're going to go into Client Point here, and we're going to look up the Jetsons. Right? We can see Astro, Elroy, George, Jane, Judy. We want Jane. Click on her here. We don't have to backdate. Now we're going to go into her entry. This should all be done when you first do the entry. As you can see, her entry was on April 10th, so this should have been done on April 10th, no later than April 12th, but we are doing it here for the purposes of training. We can see she's part of a family, and we're going to hit Save and Continue. All right. And we're going to scroll down and we're going to show you the questions that count as chronically homeless. All right. So the first question here is, does the client have a disabling condition? And we have a drop-down menu. Yes, no, client doesn't know, client refused, data not collected. The only answers we ever really want to use here are yes and no. If you're in a PSH program, a rapid rehousing program, transitional, and SRO, things like that, we should not be using client doesn't know or client refused. We should only be using yes or no. No matter what program type, including low barrier, we never want to use data not collected. Anytime you use data not collected, that sends a red flag to your HMIS team, but more importantly, to your funders. If you're doing an APR or you're looking to get ranked in the NOFA, every one of these data not collected is really, really bad. I cannot emphasize that enough. Never use data not collected. We want to see 0 data not collected in your APR. So in this case, let's set up Jane and say, yes, she has a disabling condition, right? Next thing we have to do are the disabilities, because we've said she has a disabling condition. So we need to fill out the HUD verification matrix here. Now, a lot of mistakes that people make involving the HUD verification is they click the add button. This is how not to do the HUD verification. Click the add button, pick your disability type, and fill out this chart. You don't want to do it that way. Why? Because unless you fill out every single one of these options, alcohol abuse, drug alcohol, chronic health condition, development, drug abuse, HIV and AIDS, mental health problem, physical or physical and mental, you have to do all of those. And if you don't do all of those, it will not count as being done. So yes, you have to fill them all out. The way to do it is by going over here to the right-hand side of your screen where it says HUD verification. You see the angry little red triangle? That means this needs to be done immediately. Anytime you see these red triangles, you need to stop what you're doing and fill them out. So we're going to click on HUD verification, and this is going to bring up the proper way to do a HUD verification for disability. We have this little chart here. And what we want to do is we just want to fill out each of the bubbles. This is much faster than entering each of the disability types manually. What I like to do to make it really quick is go up here to the top, choose no, and it puts no in everything, just like that. You see how we did it in less than a second? And then we're just going to move over to yes, the ones that we want to be yes. In this case, let's say that she has drug abuse. If yes, expected to be long continued and indefinite duration, we're going to say yes. Above condition of going to be long-term, we're going to say yes. Note on disability, whatever you want to do. Severe addiction to, let's do, I don't know, heroin, starting on 4/10. And the start date is the date they came into the program, not the date their addiction started. So the start date should match their project start date. We're going to hit save. And then we hit save and exit because we finished the one that's yes, all the others are no. And this is a properly filled out HUD verification. You see how they all filled in? You don't just do one of them, you have to do all of them. And when you've done it correctly, that angry little red triangle turns into a happy little green check mark. We're going Bob Ross here. So we want to make sure that we have that filled out correctly. And you want to do that any single time that you see a HUD verification. So you need to do that for monthly income and benefits. You need to do that for non-cash benefits, and you need to do that for health insurance. For the purposes of this training, we're only focusing on the chronic homeless questions, so we are going to leave those. But a good data entry person, a good case manager, makes sure that every single field under the entry is filled out. However, we're only training on chronic homeless today, which is why some of these are going to stay blank. And then the next thing we want to do is come down here to this set of questions, these three: client location, prior living situation, and length of stay in prior place. If we answer these three questions in a certain manner, conditional formatting will cause more questions to appear. So if we answer these questions correctly, it will signify, hey, this client might be chronically homeless, and it will ask some more questions for us. If we don't answer the questions in a way that will trigger the chronic homelessness, it's not going to come up. So let's start. Client location, MD601. Why? That's your only option. Prior living situation. Now, if you remember, I mentioned at the beginning of the training that we have these one right here. Place not meant for habitation, emergency shelter, safe haven. If we choose one of these, like let's say we choose place not meant for habitation, that alerts that we might be dealing with a chronically homeless client, and these other three questions magically appear. Approximate date homelessness started, regardless of where they stayed, the number of times a client has been on the street, an emergency shelter, or safe haven in the past 3 years, including today, and total number of months homeless in the past 3 years. If, say, instead of answering these three homeless questions, we choose, oh, they were renting, those questions do not appear. But if we choose, say, emergency shelter, there they are. And why? Because of the conditional format. When you choose one of these three questions under homeless situation, It triggers a notification in the system that this client might be chronically homeless. And so it brings up the other questions you need to answer. So let's answer them now. We're going to answer all these questions. Let's say length of stay in the previous place. We're going to say that she was at that emergency shelter for a year or more. Approximate date that homelessness started, let's say 01/2018. All right. So that would mean that they've probably been homeless for about. How many times has the client been on the streets in the past 3 years, including today? We're going to say one. It's just been one massive string of homelessness. All right. And the number total of months homeless on the street, we're going to say more than 12. Now, let's check the qualifications for being chronically homeless again. Is the client with a disability? We said yes. All right. And you need to have that. Has the client been homeless for a year or more? Yes, we've got more than 12 months. They've been homeless once. So it's not 4 or more stays, it's just one. And it's been more than 12 months. And it's been at one of those 3 locations that you have to have. Low barrier shelter, safe haven, or place not meant for habitation. We did emergency shelter. So we've checked all the boxes, right? We've got disability. We've got the length of stay. They were at an emergency shelter, which is one of the 3 locations. And we can see that they've been homeless for at least 12 straight consecutive months, which is one of the 2 length of stays that they need to have in order to qualify as chronically homeless. So is this client chronically homeless? They check all the boxes, right? Well, the answer is no. They don't count as chronically homeless. And you know why? Kind of a trick on me here. Because Jane is not the head of household. Jane Jetson is not. We have George Jetson listed the head of the household. And remember, only the head of the household determines whether the family is chronically homeless or not. So if Jane was a single on her own, yes, she would count as chronically homeless. However, unless George meets all these qualifications as well, because he is the head of the household, the family won't count as chronically homeless. The head of the household has to check all these boxes, not a spouse, family member, or significant other. So if this was self-head of household, then yes. And she was on her own, Jane would be chronically homeless. But because she's not, because we've got here as spouse or partner, she won't count. Save. And it wants us, of course, to answer. We can't save the work that we've done because we haven't answered any of the HUD verification questions. So again, this is a good time to always remember, you must answer all the HUD verification. We're going to say she doesn't work. Okay. Non-cash benefits, we're going to say no to all of these just to make it easy. Of course, a lot of your clients will have food stamps or SSI or SSDI. And then health insurance, let's say yes. Because as long as we're in here, we want to do all the HUD verification. Right? And now that we've answered those, it's actually going to let us save the work. So again, all those boxes were checked, but Jane, because she's not the head of the household, won't count as chronically homeless unless her husband does as well, because he's the one marked as the head of the household. If Jane was the head of the household, it would. But let's go take a look at George's record. So George does not have a disabling condition. So right there, they don't count as chronically homeless. He might have a chronically homeless, or a person would qualify as chronically homeless in his family, but because the head of the household right there does not have the disabling condition, he's good to go. He will not count as chronically homeless. Same here. Prior living situation, he owned a house for a year or more, and you can see here that those chronically homeless conditional formatting questions haven't shown up. And because of that, because George does not meet the chronically homeless definition, the household does not meet the chronically homeless definition. So this is what you do to fill out a person's chronic homeless status. You have to make sure that all of these questions are filled out in a way that it triggers the chronic homelessness. Now, Here's something we have to have a conversation. We don't want to make a person chronically homeless if they're not, and vice versa. So let's say we're like, oh, I really want to get this person to housing. We'll fudge it. Oh, they have a little bit of anxiety. Let's give them a disabled condition. Or, oh, well, they were only in that emergency shelter for 10 months. Let's say 13, so they qualify as chronically homeless. You cannot do that. You cannot fudge someone's chronic homeless status. That is called fraud. That is a HIPAA violation, and it can get you and your entire agency in legal hot water. So only fill out these questions as a self-report or you have actual evidence of. Do not fudge, because if you are called to prove this and you can't, you can get in a lot of serious trouble. Again, this would be a HIPAA violation. This would be fraud. So do not try and get your client up the ladder of, getting into transitional or permanent supportive housing sooner by fudging these questions. This is so, so important. You must do these correctly. We do not want to have someone listed as chronically homeless when they're not. And we especially don't want to have a person listed as not being chronically homeless when it actually is a problem for them. So you must answer these questions correctly and honestly. And, if you are called out in an audit, you have to be able to prove it. And so I just want to make sure you guys understand, we're showing you how to properly code someone's chronically homeless, but that doesn't mean you should be doing that unless they actually are. You must fill out these questions honestly and correctly. Now, there is one last piece that you have to do here in Montgomery County for a person to be considered chronically homeless. Let's take a look at that. We're going to go back into Jane's account. Right, here we are. So besides filling out those questions in the entry, you need to go into the client profile. Under the client profile, if we scroll all the way down, we have a file attachment here. Every client that we list as having the disabling condition, you must upload your client's disability determination document. This is mandatory in Montgomery County, and this is a big part of the coordinated entry system. Once you upload the file, someone in the CES program, the coordinated entry system program, will take a look, make sure you have the document attached, and they will fill out this chronic homeless status document check. If you do not upload the document and we do a check on your client, we will not count them as chronically homeless until you upload the disability determination document. All right. So after you finish filling out those questions under the entry exit, you want to come back here and we're going to upload the disability determination document. What else is important is we need to make sure that everyone is using the same naming convention for their documents. Currently, a lot of people are just uploading documents with no real rhyme or reason to the name. So from this moment on, there is an official naming convention here in HMIS for your disability documents. And if you do not use it, you will be asked to upload it again. Your document will be deleted and you will need to do it again. So you need to do this properly for your client to count as chronically homeless. Let's do one together so you can see an example of what the documentation naming convention is. Again, I would refer you to the PowerPoint that goes along with this presentation, because then you have a written example that you can use as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to upload a disability document now. We're going to click Add New File Attachment, and we're going to choose the file. Right? And I have one here on my desktop. Right here. All right. And then what's the description? So the description is going to be disability determination for client and their HMIS number. And we would go up here and we could see that the client's HMIS number is 9, right? And if we take a look at that disability document that I have on my desktop, hey, that's for client 8. I made a typo. So let's fix that. Didn't really make a typo, I just wanted to show. So again, we're going to go down here. We're going to go to where we upload the document, choose Add New File Attachment, choose File. Oh, hey, here's the right one. And you see how we have this name? This is what all your documents should be named. Disability determination for client and then whatever their HMIS number is. We do not want to put their name in there. We don't want their social security number. It is disability determination for client and then their HMIS number. So if the number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's disability determination for clients 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you must fill out the description as well. And the description is going to be, this is client number 9's disability determination obtained. All right. Client number 9's disability determination. And you only have so much more. So as you can see, there's not much more that you can write. So that's all we want. And if the client number is really long, don't worry about the period. You can cut that off. But we want to make sure that we get client in there. You don't have to have the hash sign either if it's too long. But we want to make sure that it's pretty clear what this document is. So we're going to click upload. And instantly it's in the system. So we can see there, file was added on 4/23/2021. What's the name of it? Disability determination for client 9, because her HMIS number is 9. This is client 9's disability determination. And the reason we're putting this in, it might seem a little redundant, because there's different reports that we can run on the HMIS lead side, where we can easily and quickly get a list of names and descriptions for all the files in the system. And this will make it easier to see who has a disability determination. If they run a report on just the file attachment names, they can see all the ones that are disability determination because you have it right there in capital letters in the name. If they run a report on just the description, they can see it as well. They can then look for what has disability determination in the description, and they'll know it's for client 9. So this is what we want to do with the name and description. All your disability determinations must have the same name format and the same description format. We have to have that in there or we will not count it. We will delete the document and you will get an email being asked for you to resubmit it with the proper naming convention. And this is what you need to do for a client to be listed as chronically homeless. That's all we have for this training here. There is a follow-up training to this that shows you how to use the APR to do a data quality check on your clients that are listed as chronically homeless, if you're missing or have too many people listed as chronically homeless. I hope this training was beneficial for you. I look forward to you joining me with further trainings in the future, and I hope you have a great day.